Some mornings feel like promises, the kind that whisper everything will stay just as it is, until the world reminds you nothing ever does. It was a Sunday, the kind of calm that makes you believe life can still be simple. I remember the smell of coffee, burnt a little, the way I like it. I just ironed my dress. The blue one Henry used to say made my eyes look kinder. The clock on the wall ticked past 8. The sunlight stretched slow fingers across the kitchen counter, touching the hymnal I'd left open. I hummed under my breath. The same hymn I'd sung every Sunday for years. Church wasn't just a place for me. It was a ritual. A place where my name still meant something when it was spoken out loud. I reached for my purse, checked for my offering envelope, and grabbed my keys from the little ceramic bowl by the door. The same keys I'd used for decades. Silver worn dull, edges smooth from years of coming home. Funny how you never think about the way a key fits. Until it doesn't. The neighborhood was still half asleep. Mrs. Callahan's dog barked once, then gave up. Somewhere, a lawn sprinkler clicked in rhythm with the bells from St. Luke's. I walked the same route I always did. 3 blocks down, past the maple tree Henry planted the year Daniel was born. Its leaves were already turning gold. The way time does when it wants to remind you you're still here. I smiled at the thought. Still here. Still walking. Still believing that home waits at the end of every prayer. At church, the air always felt different. Like forgiveness had its own temperature. Warm enough to soften whatever had gone cold in me that week. I found my usual pew, 3rd row from the back, and sat quietly, folding my hands, the same way my mother once taught me. Fold them gently, she'd say. Not in fear, in surrender. The pastor spoke about kindness that morning, about how love isn't in the grand gestures, but in remembering someone's name, in showing up, in keeping the light on for those who forgot their way home. I closed my eyes as he spoke, and for a moment, I thought about my children, how long it had been since we'd all sat at a table together, the way their laughter used to fill the hallways, how I still cooked enough for 4 out of habit. I prayed for them quietly, not for success, not for wealth, just for remembering. Lord, I whispered, keep their hearts open, and their doors too. When the service ended, I stayed a little longer, pretending to straighten my purse, just so I could watch the stained glass catch the sunlight one more time. Each color on the wall looked like a memory, blue for peace, gold for laughter, and red for the things we loved too much to admit. I smiled. The morning had been gentle, and I took it as a sign that the rest of the day would be too. On my way home, I stopped by the corner market, picked up a loaf of bread, some milk, and fresh flowers. Lilies, my daughter Linda's favorite. She used to say they made the house smell like forgiveness. I hummed again as I walked. The sun warm on my back, the key in my pocket pressing lightly against my palm. A small, familiar weight. Something that had always meant safety. Home. But as I reached my porch, I noticed something strange. The doormat was gone. The one that said welcome home. And the lock. The lock looked new, shiny, unfamiliar, cold. I brushed my hand over the knob, tried to fit my key. It resisted. I tried again, turned it harder. It stuck halfway, then stopped completely. A chill crawled up my spine. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd grabbed the wrong key, so I emptied my purse, checked every one. House key, mailbox, garage. All the same shape, all the same metal, all useless. That's strange, I whispered to no one. They must have changed it for safety. I smiled at the thought, trying to make it sound harmless, but deep down, something heavier began to stir. Because I knew every lock in this house. I'd held the door open for my children through every season, every argument, every mistake. every homecoming. And suddenly, it felt like the house itself had made a choice. I tried knocking, softly at first, then louder. I called out, "Linda? Daniel? Are you inside?" No answer, only the hum of the refrigerator through the door, and the faint sound of the clock ticking inside. A heartbeat I could no longer touch. The porch light flickered once. The wind caught the edge of my dress, and for the first time in 30 years, my own front door didn't recognize me. Faith teaches you to forgive, but it never tells you how to open a door that no longer wants you home. Some betrayals don't begin with shouting. They start with silence, and a door that refuses to open. I stood there on the porch, keys trembling in my hand, the same keys that had opened this house for 35 years. Each one carried a story, the brass one for the back door, the little silver one for the shed, the round-headed one for this door, the one I was now a stranger to. I tried again, gently, as if the lock just needed reminding. The key slid in halfway, then caught, like the house was holding its breath. I turned harder, but the metal refused to move. The air had changed. There was something cold in it now, something that didn't belong to my home. I bent down, looked closer. Fresh metal dust around the keyhole. A newer shine. Someone had replaced it recently. Not the landlord, not a repairman. Someone who had every right and every reason to know what this key meant. I knocked. Once. Twice. "Linda?" I called softly. "It's Mom. The lock isn't working." No answer. Just the sound of the rain growing steadier. I waited, the way you do when you believe love will eventually open the door. But nothing moved. No footsteps, no voices, no laughter. I set my groceries down carefully, the brown bag already damp from the drizzle. Lilies peeked out from the top, their white petals wilting in the damp air. I tried the key again. It slipped this time, too easily, like the house had already decided it didn't want to remember me. "Maybe I should call them," I whispered. But I didn't, because mothers always know when they are not forgotten by accident. I stepped back from the door and looked at the windows. The curtains were drawn, the same blue ones I'd sewn myself, now closed tightly, as if to keep even the memory of me out. Behind the glass, the faint glow of the television, shadows moving, life continuing, without me. Maybe they didn't hear me, I thought. Maybe the TV's too loud. I knocked again, louder this time. My voice cracked slightly. "Linda, Daniel, I'm back from church. Open the door, honey." Still nothing, except a muffled sound, a pause in the TV, then whispers, a child's voice, Emily's. "Mommy, Grandma's outside." Then silence, quick, heavy silence, the kind that means someone's deciding whether you still belong. I took a step closer to the door, hand on the wood, feeling the faint vibration of movement inside, plates clinking, a chair scraping, then my daughter's voice, low, tense. "Don't open it. Not now." For a second, I thought I'd misheard, that maybe she was talking about something else, a drawer, a window, not me. But then I heard it again, clearer, sharper. "Just leave it. She'll go back to church or to Mrs. Callahan's. I can't do this today." I felt something tighten in my chest, not heartbreak, something slower, like realization learning how to breathe. I stepped back from the door, looked at the flowers lying on the wet porch, their petals now sticking to the wood. Inside, a laugh broke through, Daniel's voice, then the sound of forks against plates. Dinner. They were eating dinner. In my house. At my table. Without me. I sat down on the porch step. My dress clung to my knees, rain pooling around my shoes. I didn't cry, Not yet. Taze felt too loud for a moment like this. Instead, I reached into my pocket and held the useless key. It was cold, the metal biting into my palm. I turned it over, again and again, as if touching it enough could make it remember me. It's okay, I whispered. Maybe they just forgot to tell me. But even saying it out loud, the lie sounded thin. When the storm began, I stayed where I was, watching the windows flicker with light, listening to laughter that wasn't mine anymore. I remembered tucking those same voices into bed, promising them they would always have a home. I just never thought I'd be the one left outside of it. Do you know what it feels like? I whispered to the rain, to knock on your own door and not be let in. It feels like dying without anyone noticing. I stood eventually, my knees stiff from the cold. The porch light flickered again, a single moth circling it like a tiny soul looking for warmth. I picked up the lilies, shook the water from their petals, and laid them gently on the step. If I couldn't be welcomed home, at least they could. Locks can change, I murmured, but so can hearts. And I turned away. The street was empty, the church bells far away again, like they'd followed me home just to keep me company. I walked slowly, clutching my useless key, feeling the cold metal press against my skin, like a truth that had finally stopped pretending to be kind. That was the night I learned. Love can close its doors quietly, and still sound like home when it does. You don't really believe it's true, until you hear the laughter, until you realize the sound of home no longer belongs to you. I don't remember how long I stood outside. Time loses its shape when you're waiting for kindness. The rain had softened to a mist by then, curling around the porch light like smoke. The groceries were soaked through. The bread inside had turned to mush, and the lilies looked tired of forgiving. Still, I didn't leave. Not yet, because I could hear them. My family, my children, the voices that built the walls I was standing outside of. I pressed my hand gently to the door, not to knock, just to feel the hum of life on the other side. Through the wood came fragments, the clinking of forks, the small giggle of Emily, the shuffle of feet across the floor I'd polished for decades. And then, Linda's voice, clear, familiar, still my little girl in tone, but sharpened now by years I hadn't been part of. Just leave her be, she said. It's better this way. She'll cause drama. Better this way. As if love could ever be improved by silence. I leaned closer to the window, the curtain pulled too tight for me to see inside. I could only hear, and somehow that was worse. Daniel's voice came next, deeper, tired. We should have told her. She'll find out eventually. I couldn't, Linda said quickly. Not after what happened with the will. You know how she gets when she feels left out. Left out. I almost laughed, as if this was a misunderstanding, not exile. Inside, Emily's laughter burst out again, pure, unknowing, the sound of a child who hadn't learned what walls could do. Grandma's outside, she said again, a voice full of wonder, not worry. Emily, eat your dinner, Linda replied. Her tone cut through the warmth like a knife. Don't start. Silence. Even the child obeyed the lock. I took a step back from the window. For a moment, I saw my reflection there, a blurred ghost in the rain, hair clinging to my face, eyes wide like someone who'd just been told her house had burned down. Except the house wasn't gone. It was just occupied. Without me. My heart didn't break in one clean snap. It cracked in small, polite ways. Like porcelain under slow pressure. Like something that still believed it might be fixed. I tried the door one last time. The key slid in halfway again. The same dull click, the same refusal. And from inside came a sound that stopped me. The scrape of a chair. Footsteps. For a second, hope bloomed in my throat. Then the bolt turned again. Locked. Twice. She's still out there, Daniel said quietly. What if the neighbors see? Then they'll mind their business, Linda snapped. It's done. We can't go back now. Can't go back now. The words stayed in my head, echoing until they didn't sound like words anymore, just finality dressed in logic. I sat down on the porch swing, the one Henry built for me our first year in this house. It creaked under my weight, a tired old friend wondering what had happened to all the laughter we used to share. I wanted to scream. I wanted to bang on the door, shatter the glass, make them see me. But love doesn't rage when it dies. It folds quietly, like a letter no one opened. So I just whispered, "It's all right, sweetheart. I'm still here." Maybe they couldn't hear me. Maybe they didn't want to. But I said it anyway, because mothers always do. The rain stopped completely. The air smelled of wet earth and something bittersweet, like endings disguised as beginnings. I looked at the useless key still in my hand. The metal had left an imprint in my palm. It almost looked like a small scar, a mark of loyalty, of belonging that the world had retired. "You can change the lock," I whispered, but not what I opened with it. I stayed on that porch until the moon replaced the streetlights, until the sound of dishes inside faded, and the voices turned to television chatter, then to nothing at all. And when it was silent again, when I was sure they were asleep, I placed the key on the step, not out of anger, out of grief that had finally learned to stand up straight. "Keep it," I whispered. "You'll need it more than I do." That night, I stopped trying to get inside the house and started trying to get back inside myself. There are nights that hold you gently, and nights that test how long you can stand in the rain before you stop believing someone will open the door. I don't remember when I sat down, but I do remember how the wood felt, cold at first, then familiar. The same swing where I'd rocked my babies to sleep on summer evenings. The same porch where Henry had stood every morning, coffee in hand, telling me the weather like it was news. And now it was just me, the rain, and the echo of a home that no longer wanted me. I watched the windows glow and fade, one by one, as the lights went out inside. First the kitchen, then the hallway, then the room at the top of the stairs, the one I painted pale yellow when Linda was born. It was strange. From the outside, the house looked peaceful, beautiful, even, a place full of life. But beauty is cruel when it no longer includes you. The rain picked up, drops splattering across the porch steps, the lilies still lying there, their petals curling in surrender. I pulled my cardigan tighter, feeling the chill set into my bones, the kind of cold that isn't weather, it's realization. Inside, I heard one last sound before everything went still. A child's voice, sleepy, distant. "Mommy, is Grandma sad?" A pause. Then Linda's soft reply. "She's fine, sweetheart. She just needed some time alone." Time alone. That was one way to describe standing in the rain outside your own life. I smiled, even as tears began to blur the world. Because what else could I do? Mothers learned to make even heartbreak look polite. I looked out across the street. Every other porch light was still on. Every home looked like it was holding someone. Somebody's husband. Somebody's daughter. Somebody's mother. Everyone but me. I leaned back on the swing. Let it move gently. Back and forth. Like memory rocking me to sleep. The rain hit the tin gutter above. Steady, rhythmic, almost kind. And for a moment, I imagined Henry sitting beside me again, his arm across the back of the swing, his voice low, the way it always was when he was about to say something that mattered. "Martha," he'd whisper, "you've done enough waiting in life. Come inside." I closed my eyes. I can't, I whispered back. Not anymore. Hours passed that way. The street light flickered. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and the moon climbed over the trees, turning everything silver. I remembered birthdays, Christmas mornings, school nights when I'd wait up just to hear their keys turn in the lock. That sound had once been my favorite thing in the world. Proof they were safe. Proof I still mattered. Now I'd give anything just to hear it one more time. I whispered into the darkness, God, if you're listening, I know I shouldn't ask for miracles, but could you at least tell me what I did wrong? The wind answered first, then a quiet rumble of thunder far away, as if heaven was sighing with me. Maybe love isn't something you lose. I murmured, maybe it just moves to another room and locks the door behind it. By the time the rain stopped, the world was a mirror, wet wood, gleaming streets, everything reflecting everything else. I could see the house in the puddles, the porch light still flickering, the lilies half drowned, and above it all, my own face, tired, but still here. You can't come home again. I whispered to my reflection, but you can still remember how it felt to belong. I stood, the porch swing creaking one last goodbye, picked up the soggy flowers, and placed them gently by the door, a small peace offering to the ghosts of love. Then I stepped off the porch, barefoot now, the earth soft beneath my feet. Each step away felt lighter, not because I stopped hurting, but because I finally stopped expecting the door to open. That night, I didn't lose my home. I lost my permission to wait for it. Morning always comes, even for the ones who didn't sleep, even for those who spent the night waiting for a door that never opened. When I woke, the porch was silver with dew. My shoes were soaked through, and my hands ached from holding the useless key all night. The air smelled of rain and lilacs, that gentle perfume that always comes after sorrow. The street was quiet, but one curtain across the way moved. Then a voice, soft and careful. Martha, are you all right, dear? It was Helen, my neighbor, the widow from 2 houses down. Her hair always tied in a scarf. Her eyes kind in the way people's eyes get, when they've known both love and loneliness. I tried to smile. I'm fine, Helen. Just an early start, that's all. But my voice betrayed me. Thin, frayed at the edges. She stepped onto her porch, slippers tapping the wet wood. An early start in the rain. Come, you'll catch your death out there. Before I could protest, she was already crossing the street with an umbrella. It was yellow, bright enough to look almost foolish against the gray morning, but somehow it made the world feel less cruel. She helped me up from the swing, her hand cool but steady. There now, she said softly. You look like you've had a long night. I wanted to tell her everything, about the lock, the voices, the way love can change shape without warning. But when she looked at me with those understanding eyes, I didn't need to. She already knew. Her house smelled like cinnamon and old books. A kettle hissed on the stove, and a cat stretched lazily on the rug. She sat me down at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd once told me about losing her husband. She poured the tea. Steam rose between us like fragile grace. No milk, she said, smiling softly. You never took milk, did you? I blinked. You remember that? I remember everything about the lonely ones, she said. We always find each other eventually. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain sliding off her gutters, and the quiet clink of her spoon against her cup. Finally, I asked, did it ever stop hurting, when they stopped coming home? Helen looked out the window. The sky had begun to clear, thin light brushing the tops of the wet trees. No, she said, but it changes. It turns from a wound into a memory. And memories, she paused, don't need doors to enter. She reached across the table, her fingers resting gently on mine. You're not the only one, Martha. They forget that love doesn't retire. It just waits somewhere else. Her words landed somewhere deep in me, like small seeds planted in soil I'd forgotten was still good. I looked down at my hands. The key was still there, its edges biting into my skin. Helen noticed. That your house key? I nodded. It used to be. She took it gently, set it on the counter, and poured more tea. Then leave it there for now. You can pick it up again when it doesn't hurt to hold. The clock on her wall ticked slowly, the sound steady, forgiving. Outside, the sun pushed through the clouds, and the street began to sparkle with light. I watched the window fog as the kettle hissed again. It reminded me of simpler mornings, when I still believed home was a place, not a person. You know, I said quietly, they were just children once. I used to walk them to school in this same rain. Helen smiled sadly. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Realizing the people you taught how to come home are the ones who forgot how to let you in. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't hurt, the kind that holds. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. I looked around her kitchen, the faded wallpaper, the crooked clock, the stack of unopened mail. It was all ordinary, but it was real, and it was kind. When I finally stood to leave, Helen pressed a small thermos into my hands. Soup, she said. For later. Not because you're hungry, but because you'll need something to hold. I smiled. Tea's finally coming, not sharp ones, just soft, grateful ones. Thank you, Helen, for letting me in. She looked at me with that same quiet grace. That's what doors are for, dear. To remind us there's always another way home. Outside, the air was warmer. The sky, a pale blue rinsed clean by rain. As I walked, the useless key felt lighter in my pocket, like it was slowly learning how to forgive too. And for the first time, I didn't look back at the house I'd lost. I just whispered, thank you for sending someone who still remembers how to open a door. Sometimes comfort doesn't come from the people you love, but from the ones who remind you that you are still seen. The days after the rain came slow, quieter than I expected. I stayed mostly inside, in the little apartment above Helen's garage, where she insisted I move just until things settle. I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength to. The place was small, but it had sunlight and silence that didn't judge me. Every morning I'd make tea and sit by the window, watching the street where my old house stood. From here, it looked different, smaller, almost gentle again. If I squinted, I could almost pretend. Nothing had changed, but then the wind would shift, and I'd see the new curtains, the bright bicycle in the yard. And remember, they had moved on, and I had been moved out. One morning, I heard something slip through the slot in the door. A letter, not a bill or a notice, but a real letter, handwritten, with my name on it. I hadn't seen that in a while. The paper smelled faintly of candle wax and lilies. Inside was a note from Pastor Allen. Dear Martha, we missed you in service last Sunday. The lilies you donated were beautiful. Their scent filled the sanctuary all week. I just wanted to thank you, not for the flowers, but for the way you always notice the small things. The way the light hits the stained glass. The way silence feels like prayer. You once told me that home is where your soul rests easiest. I hope you still believe that, even if the walls look different now. With love and peace, Pastor Allen. I read it twice, 3 times. The words blurred halfway through. Not from sadness this time, from recognition. Someone had remembered. Someone had seen the quiet things, the things that don't make noise but still mean love. I held that letter like a fragile gift. It wasn't much, just ink and paper, but it felt like the first door that had opened for me in a long time. Home is where your soul rests easiest. I whispered, maybe I've been standing outside the wrong door all along. I went to the church that Sunday, wore my old blue dress, the one that still smelled faintly of rain and hope. Pastor Allen greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't need words. He didn't ask about the house, or the lock, or the missing key. He just took my hand and said, "It's good to see you home." And for the first time in months, I didn't flinch at the word. I sat in my same pew, third row from the back, and looked at the sunlight streaming through the stained glass. The colors danced on the wooden floor, red, blue, gold, like memories that had found new shapes. I closed my eyes and breathed, slowly, deeply, and I realized something I hadn't before. The peace I'd been chasing hadn't been locked behind a door. It had been waiting inside me, patiently, for permission to be heard again. After the service, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been older than 30. Her eyes were red from crying. "Your flowers," she said quietly. "They reminded me of my mom. She passed last year. I just wanted to say thank you." Her voice trembled, and before I could stop myself, I took her hands in mine. Then they did what they were meant to do. I said, "They found someone who needed them." When she walked away, I looked at the altar. The lilies were still there, fading a little, but still standing tall. And I realized, maybe that's all any of us can hope for, to be remembered, even if just through the things we once gave away. That evening, back in the little apartment, I placed the pastor's letter in a drawer, right beside the old house key, two symbols of what I'd lost and of what I'd found. I smiled to myself. "You can change the locks," I whispered, "but not the heart that built the home." They say you can't go home again, but sometimes you just need to see it, not to stay, but to finally let go. It had been almost 2 months since the morning the key stopped working. 2 months of quieter mornings, of tea instead of coffee, of prayer instead of waiting. The pain had softened, not gone, but folded neatly, like an old photograph kept in a drawer. Still, there was one thing left undone, one truth that wouldn't rest. And so, on a golden Sunday afternoon, I decided to go back. The street looked smaller than I remembered, the trees taller, as if time had been kind to everything except me. The old maple Henry planted out front was heavy with leaves, its branches casting a trembling shadow across the porch. I stopped halfway down the sidewalk. From here, I could see the house clearly. My house. Only now, it wasn't mine. The paint had been freshened, pale cream instead of yellow. The porch railings were new. Even the flower beds looked neater, as if someone younger had learned how to care for them. For a moment, I wondered if they still used my old dishes, if the laughter still filled the kitchen the same way, if Emily remembered my stories, the ones I used to whisper to her at bedtime when she was too afraid of the dark to sleep. I didn't walk to the door this time. I stayed at the edge of the yard, where the sidewalk met the grass, where strangers belong. A car was parked in the driveway, the same spot where Henry used to park his old truck. I could almost hear it, the slam of the door, his voice calling, "Honey, I'm home." The sound hit me like sunlight through glass, beautiful and just a little too bright. Then I saw her, Emily, running through the yard, her hair flying behind her like a banner of light. She'd grown taller. Her laughter was louder now, freer, maybe. For a moment, I thought she saw me. Her head turned slightly, eyes catching the light, and my heart stopped. But then Linda called from the porch, and she ran toward her instead, straight past me, straight into her mother's arms. And there it was again. That familiar ache that doesn't hurt sharply anymore, but hums like an old song you can't stop humming. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. The tears had already done their work. What I felt now was something quieter, something like forgiveness, not because they'd earned it, but because I needed to be free. I looked up at the sky. It was the same one I'd stood under all my life. Different clouds, same heaven. And in that moment, I whispered the truth I had waited too long to say. I loved you enough to let you forget me. I turned to leave, but just as I stepped away, the front door opened. Linda stood there, talking to someone behind her. She didn't see me at first. Then, as if some small wind carried her attention, her eyes met mine. It lasted only a second, long enough to say everything words had failed. Her face softened. She started to speak, but no sound came out. I smiled. A small one. The kind that says, "It's all right. I understand." Then I turned, walked slowly down the sidewalk, each step lighter than the last. Behind me, the wind carried laughter, a child's voice, the soft hum of life continuing, and for once, it didn't sting. When I reached the corner, I stopped, took one last look at the house, the home I had built, the life I had given, the love I had planted like flowers in spring, and I whispered, "Be happy, my darlings, even if it's without me." I turned the corner. The house disappeared behind the trees, and in that small act, I finally came home to myself. Sometimes closure isn't about doors opening again. It's about learning you were never meant to keep knocking. Every story needs a place to end. But some endings aren't about leaving. They are about finally resting where love can still find you. It's been 3 months now. The seasons have shifted again. The air smells of rain and magnolia, and my new little home, the apartment above Helen's garage, finally feels like it belongs to me. The mornings are quiet here, but not empty. I water my plants, feed her cat when she's away, and sometimes we sit on the porch with tea, watching the world soften into evening. It isn't the home I built brick by brick, but it's the peace I'd been chasing without knowing it. On my bedside table sits a small wooden drawer. Inside it, 2 things: a letter from the church and my old house key. I keep them there, side by side. The past that locked me out, and the faith that let me in again. Sometimes I take the key out, turn it over in my palm, feel the grooves worn by years of coming home. It doesn't hurt the way it used to. Now, it feels like gratitude, a reminder of what I once had, and the strength it took to let it go. This morning I wrote a note, folded it carefully, and placed it in the same drawer beside the key. It's not meant for anyone in particular. Maybe for Linda, maybe for Emily, or maybe for whoever finds it long after I'm gone. If you ever wonder whether I was angry, I wasn't. If you ever think I stopped loving you, I didn't. I just learned that love can live in silence too. And sometimes the bravest thing a heart can do is stay open, even after the door closes. I smiled as I wrote it. Not a sad smile. A full one, the kind that knows loss and still chooses gentleness. In the evenings, I walk past the church on my way to the park. The stained glass windows glow golden with the last light, and the lilies on the altar are always fresh. Pastor Allen still nods when he sees me, and Helen always leaves the porch light on. Some nights, I sit on that park bench and look at the sky above the neighborhood I once called mine, and it doesn't hurt anymore. It simply exists. A chapter closed, but never forgotten. You can change the locks, I whisper to the evening air, but you can't erase the hands that built the door. I look up. A star flickers in the purple sky. Small, stubborn, still shining. And I think maybe that's what love really is. Not possession, Not invitation. Just light that refuses to go out. Tonight, before bed, I open the drawer one last time, run my thumb along the cold edge of the key, and then close it softly. Thank you, I whisper, for teaching me that sometimes the heart's door only opens when you stop waiting outside. I turn off the lamp. The room glows faintly with moonlight, and in that silver quiet, I realize I am home. Tell me, dear ones, have you ever stood outside a door that used to open for you? What did you do when it didn't? Did you wait, or did you learn to build another home? Share your story below, because sometimes healing begins when one heart answers another.